So buckle up because this deep dive, oh man, this one's a trip. We're going deep into the mind of William Vincent Carleton. And where is William Vincent Carleton, you ask? Well, picture this. Mexico City, 5:17 in the morning.
Wow, that's early. What's he doing up at that hour?
That's the thing, right? He's not just sipping coffee, easing into the day. This man is on a whole other level. We're talking lucid dreams, AI conspiracies, the fate of society, all before most people have even hit snooze.
Okay, so we're talking next level existential crisis before breakfast. This I've got to hear.
Oh, it's wild. And thankfully, we have our expert here to help us unpack it all. So where do we even start with this guy? He jumps right into this whole lucid dreaming thing, which I feel like a lot of people can relate to, right?
Yeah, totally. It's interesting, though, how he connects these lucid dreams to a much bigger philosophy. He talks about having 4 nights in a row of these super intense, vivid dreams, and he links it back to listening to Wayne Dyer's meditation techniques.
Okay, so he's finding inspiration in unexpected places, but it gets even weirder, right? He mentions this double dream, which he sees as some kind of message from the subconscious.
Exactly. He's really drawing on the work of Neville Goddard here. Do you know much about Goddard's theories?
Vaguely. Give me a refresher.
So Goddard was all about the power of the mind, this idea that our thoughts can actually shape our reality. And he believed that these double dreams were like our subconscious sending us a telegram, a direct message trying to get our attention. It seems like Carleton totally bought into that idea.
Wow. Okay, so he's got these intense dreams, he's pulling in Goddard, and then he throws AI into the mix.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting. He was actually planning to plug this whole monologue into Google's deep dive AI, like as an experiment.
Whoa, hold on. He's feeding his 5 a.m. ramblings to the AI overlords. That's ballsy.
Right. But here's the thing. He's already predicting that the AI will totally misinterpret his words. He even calls it left-leaning, like it's biased against his point of view.
He thinks the AI is going to be political biased.
That's what it sounds like. It's like he's anticipating this head-on collision between his own worldview and what he sees as this kind of inherent bias built into artificial intelligence.
Wow. And something tells me that clash of worldviews isn't limited to just AI, right? He seems to have some pretty strong opinions about modern society as a whole. He keeps using this word Occidental. What's that all about?
Good catch. He uses Occidental to refer to Western society, mostly Europe and America. And he contrasts that with what he calls the Orient, which he seems to have this idealized view of. It's almost like a romanticized version of the East, though it's not clear if he's talking about a specific place or just a set of values.
Okay, so he's got this us versus them thing going on, and I'm guessing this idealized Orient is the opposite of everything he hates about the West, like these two forces on a crash course.
Exactly. And he doesn't hold back on the criticism. He talks about our obsession with death, points to nursing homes as death boxes.
Death boxes, that's pretty grim.
It is. He's basically saying we're so terrified of aging and death in the West that we've created these institutions to hide it away. He also talks about the breakdown of traditional values and warns of, get this, a coming societal collapse.
Okay, so full-on doomsday scenario. And I'm guessing there's a conspiracy theory in there somewhere.
Oh, you know it. He hints at this shadowy elite that's controlling everything. He deeply distrusts the media and the government, believes they're controlled by a tiny minority. He even puts a number on it, 3%, who are pulling the strings and manipulating the masses.
3%, huh? He's got it all figured out. But Carleton doesn't just want to complain, does he? He seems to have his own blueprint for a better future, a better way of living.
Absolutely. And that's where his ideas about conservative and liberal energy come in. Now, before we jump in,
let me guess, we're not talking about Democrats and Republicans here.
Got it. This isn't about political parties. It's something much deeper. He's using those terms to describe 2 fundamentally different approaches to life itself.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Break it down for me. What's conservative energy in Carleton's world?
He describes it as a way of conserving your vital life force. Think of it like this. Imagine your energy is a limited resource, and you need to be very intentional about how you spend it.
So, like budgeting your energy, making sure you're not wasting it on things that don't really matter.
Exactly. Carleton believes that by embracing traditional values, things like self-reliance, hard work, family a mark, you can serve this precious energy. He sees it as a path toward true sustainability, not just for the environment, but for our minds and souls.
Okay, so that's conservative energy. What's the flip side? What's liberal energy look like in his view?
He paints it as a state of reckless expenditure. Imagine constantly scattering your energy in all directions, never focusing on any one thing for too long. He believes this leads to burnout, exploitation, and a dependence on external forces.
It's like he sees these two impulses battling it out, both within society and within each of us.
Exactly. And for him, the stakes couldn't be higher. He's convinced that the fate of humanity hinges on which path we choose.
So we've got these two opposing forces. Conservative energy, all about preservation and tradition, and liberal energy, which he sees as more scattered and unsustainable. And Carleton seems to think this battle is playing out on a societal level too, like the West is teetering on the brink of collapse. Is he onto something here? Have there been other points in history where societies have gone through something similar?
It's a fascinating question, and definitely one that's kept historians and sociologists busy for centuries. When you look back at history, you do see these cycles of growth and decay, and then renewal.
Right, like what goes up must come down.
Exactly. Take the Roman Empire, for example. They built this incredible civilization, right? Advanced technology, sophisticated infrastructure, complex legal systems.
They basically wrote the book on empires.
Right. But they weren't immune to decline, were they? They also experienced rampant corruption, overexpansion. Ultimately, it all came crashing down.
So you're saying that even the most powerful societies aren't immune to this kind of collapse. There's a precedent for what Carleton's describing.
Exactly. No society, no matter how mighty, is immune to the forces of history. And it's interesting that Carleton ties this decline back to a loss of traditional values. That's a recurring theme we see throughout history, really.
Okay, so maybe his take on societal collapse isn't that far-fetched. But what about his solution? This whole idea of a technologically advanced utopia, robots doing all the work, it feels like something out of science fiction.
It's definitely a bold vision. But to be fair, the idea of a technological utopia has been around for centuries. It's this idea that's captivated thinkers. We see it everywhere, from literature utopian communities in science fiction to philosophical treatises on ideal societies. It's this yearning for something better, for a better world, often imagined through the lens of technology and going back to simpler values.
But usually with fewer robots running the show, right? Carleton's emphasis on automation being the answer to everything is a bit, well, out there.
It's definitely a unique aspect of his vision. But here's the thing. If you look at current trends in automation and AI, it's not completely crazy to imagine a future where technology plays a much bigger role in our lives. We're already seeing AI making its way into food production, resource management, even healthcare and education.
True, technology is advancing at an insane pace. But it makes you wonder, if we hand over the reins to robots, what's left for us to do? Carleton even acknowledges this, right? He talks about the potential for people to have an existential crisis.
You hit on a crucial point. He predicts that this abundance of free time, being free from the daily grind of work, will force humanity to confront a fundamental question. What is our purpose? What are we here to do?
It's like suddenly, bam, we've achieved perfect work-life balance, but we're totally unprepared for it.
He sees it as both a challenge and an opportunity. He even calls it God's manifold expression, the state of constant creation and self-discovery. He believes that once humans are freed from the constraints of basic survival, this is what we'll be driven by.
Okay, that does sound kind of amazing. To have the time and the freedom to explore your passions, to create, to contribute. But let's be real, not everyone is cut out to be an artist or a philosopher, right? What happens to the people who find this new world overwhelming? The ones who don't thrive in this kind of unstructured existence?
That's a really good question, and honestly, it's one that Carleton doesn't fully address. His focus is definitely more on the people who are ready to embrace this new paradigm of abundance and creative freedom. He seems to believe that once our basic needs are met, the human spirit will naturally gravitate towards self-actualization, towards a higher purpose.
So, a potential utopia for some, but maybe not for everyone. It all hinges on this belief that deep down we all crave this kind of creative expression and self-discovery.
Exactly. And even if we do achieve this level of technological utopia, it's important to remember it doesn't erase the complexities of human nature. We'll still grapple with relationships, with personal struggles, with the search for meaning. Technology might change the playing field, but it doesn't rewrite the rules of the game entirely.
It's like that old saying, wherever you go, there you are. Even in a robot-run paradise, we'll still be bringing our own baggage along for the ride.
Precisely. And that brings us to another important aspect of Carleton's monologue, his call to action.
Right. He doesn't just want us to sit back and listen to him ramble on about robots and utopia. He actually wants us to do something.
Yes. And it all circles back to that idea of conserving our energy, even if we don't necessarily buy into his whole robot overlord vision. He's urging us to be more mindful, more intentional about where we direct our energy right now in this moment.
So he's saying even if we're not ready to, hand over the keys to the robots just yet, there are still things we can do today to be more intentional with our energy.
Exactly. Carleton's point is that by focusing on the things that truly matter, family, community, personal growth, we can start building a better future right now in our own lives.
I like that. It's empowering. It's not about waiting for some external force to fix everything. He even circles back to those terms, conservative and liberal. But this time, it's about how we manage our own energy, right? Not just society as a whole.
You got it. It's about recognizing that our energy, our time, our attention, these are all finite resources. He's challenging us to stop outsourcing our happiness. Stop waiting for the government, the media, or even some technological utopia to give us fulfillment. We have agency. We have a choice.
So it's about taking ownership, taking action. What would that look like in a practical sense?
Well, he doesn't lay out a step-by-step plan, but he wants us to ask ourselves, what small step can you take today to conserve your energy, to really focus on what matters, and maybe even build a little piece of that better future?
I love that. It's such a simple question, but it's really powerful when you think about it. What could that look like for someone listening right now? Any examples come to mind?
Absolutely. Maybe it's reaching out to a family member you haven't spoken to in a while, or finally starting that creative project you've been putting off. Or maybe it's something as simple as taking a few moments to appreciate the good things in your life. Really savor those moments, instead of dwelling on the negative.
Small steps, but they can have a ripple effect. It's like that butterfly effect thing. Who knows, maybe Carleton's onto something. Maybe by shifting our own approach, our own way of being in the world, we can spark bigger changes in society.
It's a thought-provoking idea, isn't it? He's definitely tapped into this deep-seated anxiety we all have about the state of the world. But he's also tapped into our deep-seated longing for something better, something more. Is he a visionary? A dreamer? Maybe a bit of both. I'll let our listeners decide.
It's given us a lot to unpack, that's for sure. This deep dive has been a wild ride. From lucid dreams to robot uprising.
And everything in between.
Exactly. But it's a good reminder that even amidst all the chaos and uncertainty in the world, we have more power than we think to shape our own lives, and maybe even influence the world around us.
Couldn't agree more.
So if you're as intrigued by William Vincent Carleton's 5:17 a.m. musings as we are, we encourage you to check out his monologue. We'll be sure to link to it in the show notes. Draw your own conclusions. Until next time, keep those minds open and keep diving deep.
My name is William Vincent Carleton. The last name is spelled Carleton. This is the sound of me speaking and rubbing a microphone with a fluffy cover. It's currently 5:16, make that 5:17 in the morning, Central Time, Mexico City. And it is quiet as can be this morning, I can say. Last night, which is this night, I had a very lucid dream. In fact, the last 4 nights have all been lucid, the dreams. I even had what Neville Goddard would explain or describe as a doubled dream just last night. And I wrote about it in a way without knowing. This conversation, this speech, this talking is to facilitate that which I normally would write out of convenience. comes with little to no expectation of receipt. I suppose that's the greatest point, but beyond that, I want to talk about this doubled dream. When you see or interact with a space or a person, for a second time, it is because God, the source of your consciousness and mine, our truth in being, our true aliveness, is very close to delivering to us some change, some result. Once again, that can be perilous in thinking with expectation, I know. However, there's something different with a double dream, because when we dream, our conscious identity, our ego, our collection of life experiences in the way that we identify as a name, has no real influence other than the echoes it leaves behind when it drops into sleep. These last few nights with lucid dreaming have been earlier sleep nights. I've discovered that if you go to sleep by 9:30, the possibility of having a lucid dream around midnight is very probable. I've been listening to Wayne Dyer's voice, saying the words of U.S. Anderson's 3 Magic Words, Meditation 1. I know that I'm pure spirit, that I always have been and always will be. That's how it begins. This recording of my voice, I plan on submitting to Notebook LM, an experiment by Google. And upon submitting the transcript of my voice, or just this recording the way it sounds, I plan on clicking a button called Deep Dive, in which an AI algorithm trained by a large language model will determine, based on its own training and subsets of data, what to make of it. And it will formulate opinions and judgments of my character and handle it from a clearly biased and left-leaning perspective. A perspective of the large majority who listen to NPR thinking this is going to raise my intellect sufficient enough to navigate the mysteries of life. You don't want to count on one source for all of your wisdom, unless that source comes from an entity that is aware that their ego self is at best an illusion. once you come across someone who has that understanding of them, self, then it's worth a listen. Not for the expectations that you're going to gain something, but simply because you know you're listening to sounds that are coming from a source that is directly related to consciousness and the giver and gift of life. I am that. I don't say it with pride. I don't say it to boast, because I'm not saying it as William. I repeat, the voice that you're listening to in egoic self is William Vincent Carleton. The source of that is not his. If you were to insist upon defining me for the sake of feeling safe and separate, you could say, the consciousness, the aliveness, the observer of this aliveness, that is the sole proprietor and executor of the identity that is William Vincent Carleton, is speaking. Thus, if I recognize myself in the same way, I'm speaking to myself. I am speaking to myself. So at least you know that I have the awareness of that at times, and at other times I step right on stage and I say, it's important that you recognize my name. It's important that this be shared and received. It's important that I be compensated for my service every time someone listens, every time someone benefits from this. It's important that I be compensated. And what I find more recent than ever before is, beyond the expectation of that, I go into this state of being where I'm literally a billionaire. Literally. Bringing food, resources, and wisdom to my local communities, our local communities. Anytime I hear that there is an opportunity for there to be needs met in the ways of food, shelter, clothing, spiritual wisdom, joyous entertainment, spiritual retreats, I already know that these things are happening, you see, because they're a desire of mine. And these desires now are greater than the desire to fall back on an identity that feels lack and the inability to be received. That's all it is now. The result? Daily lucid dreams, doubled, coming back to places where I've been before and seeing them, seeing certain people and certain expressions And that means the subconscious has felt it twice. Its echo to itself has been made without the interference of my identity, and thus must be expressed swiftly. Even if it takes a long time, the expression is already confirmed, is what I'm trying to say. Which is just more reassurance that the way that I'm thinking, which is, in a way, a form of quantum jumping, which I will do in a moment, I've decided, is more my reality than what I see before me. As peaceful as this morning is in Mexico City, it's not my reality. My reality is serving people in the Appalachians right now. Giving them food, water, resources, internet, shelter, voting booths, and the wisdom to understand beyond the why, but how it could be possible that all of these horrific experiences are rolling out right now. It's the how that is more important than the why. Because the how takes responsibility over it. The why simply dismisses it as a circumstance from which we have no control. But yet we must experience all the same. So early this morning, I want you to know that we are going to deep dive together into a state of being, should you choose to join me. From which you can be the ideal, wish-fulfilled self without any restriction or interference. And this, if exercised regularly, shall be the greatest form of salvation that you will ever receive, because you will allow yourself to live this now. My worry used to be, and still is sometimes, but not nearly as frequently as it used to be, focused on how these words are going to permeate and reach you, as if I were separate from you. And before I get into all that philosophy, or just avoiding it entirely, because it becomes monotonous and repetitive, I simply return to the fact that I'm speaking to God, rather than a bunch of separate entities who have some control over me through whether or not you click that like and subscribe button or leave a comment. Same goes for the deep divers, the man and woman entity that listens and interprets these words to somehow pigeonhole and label someone who understands their truth as God. No more offense is taken, and you know why? It's so important to see this. Because when you have unlimited resources, even if it's in your mind, through the imagination, especially if it is, what can anyone truly do to interfere with your day of happiness? For when you have unlimited resources and total wish fulfillment and access to your beloved children, family, friends, and community, from which you can pivot and act and serve in any way that you imagine being ideal, to love and appreciate the aliveness of every God expression, every human, when you have that ability without any restriction, what opinion really matters? You have to ask yourself. You know that the opinions are being voiced because people are experiencing psychosis, believing to be separate from you and others. So you know that this is happening. Yet at the same time, you know you're living your wish-fulfilled life that's ideal. Whether people believe it's real or not, you're there in your mind. You're using your imagination. It's a fourth dimensional quality because you can instantly go there and live it out without any distraction or interference. It also can't be destroyed. It can't be taken from you. So knowing this, it makes it in fact more real and more static and more present in your life than any other form of identity that you could be entertaining, including the one that is most convincingly before you. Some may say that's disassociation or a form of psychosis. Once again, when you have everything, what does it matter? It's just another opinion. That's all it is. From an entity playing the same game of life that is still going through the manifold expressions of struggle with identity, thinking they are victims of external circumstances, thus see you as a threat, see these words as a threat to one's livelihood and form of identity. The only difference between myself and that is that that is a fear-inducing world of suffering. The world that I choose to go to, where I can provide and do for everyone, for you, my children, my loved ones, my family, my community, my state, my country, my planet, my universe. When I have everything, and I need not count on a single entity outside of myself so that I can focus entirely on giving. What does an opinion matter? Someone who feels separate from you, do you think they're ever going to truly know someone like this? Who knows themselves as a giver and gift itself as a treasure that's walking? All you can do is continue serving without even hope, but the understanding that eventually they'll tap into this stream. They'll tap into your stream, and it may be at the bottom of where the stream has run, when it's most murky and has the littlest amount of movement, and most of its real wealth and resources have been stripped away, including the value of the words that were once so clear. But that's a personal choice by the person who wants to receive it in that way. And of course, what are they going to say about your source at that point if that's all they taste is the murky, dirty water that's filled with mosquitoes and other sorts of parasites? Rather than taking it from the source, all the way up at the top of the mountain where it comes out clear, full of rich resources, as if it were comparable to the aorta, where your heart's pumping out this fresh new blood. There's my stomach. Whose stomach? So the idea is this: it's not so much about whether or not you believe this will be received, this will take off. It's just you're there. So I'm telling you right now, we're about to quantum jump, stomach and all. We're going to quantum jump into a state of being where you imagine yourself living from the end, which is to live as the ultimate form of yourself, doing what you desire the most, and for everyone that's different. However, allow me to entertain you with my vision of where I go now. It's just as I said. I live on a property that has plenty of acreage. That acreage is being maintained by robotics. Within that acreage is an estate with several properties. 2 of those individual properties are given to my parents and are maintained by robotics. The upkeep, the maintenance, the construction, the additions, all maintained by it. There's a main house. My children reside there. My wife, who has specific physical characteristics in accordance to my desires for procreation, also resides there. She understands, unlike many modern women, especially Occidental women, she understands. She is there to receive the benefit of provision, wisdom, and care and protection, while having the freedom to express herself fully. Also understands she is desired because of her physical beauty and her ability to bring forth life, because of her youth and the care that she puts into her body for that purpose. Now think for a moment as to whether or not that upsets you, if you're listening to it, and go to the life that you wish to live. It's that simple. When I think of the ideal woman, I'm not thinking of all these specifics that she must say and do, as much as what I believe she should be before anything else. Youthful, fit, healthy in mind and body, aware of her truth, never before married, pure, and willing to rear children, to build an empire. That is my desire, just as it is my desire to be a billionaire for the sake that I can, at the drop of a hat, immediately command that people receive resources when they need them. No more crises. No more people living without. The greenhouses get built by robotics, maintained by robotics, and all of the resources are distributed and harvested by robotics, replenished by robotics. so that the cost becomes minimal to negligible in order to reproduce this over and over and over again. This is my desire. So that every community that has ever been struggling and teetering now thrives. And while this food is being produced, other robots are doing 24-hour, 7-day-a-week work on the construction and redistribution of resources on fertile land that is filled with proper lumber to be milled and used for the production of homes. And if there are a lack of trees, they'll be planted on reserved estates just for that purpose. And meanwhile, the earth, which is widely and wildly abundant, shall serve as the adobe structure, and we will grow hemp and straw to serve as part of the foundation of the adobe. So where there aren't trees, the adobe buildings are made. Very simple. If we must use big costales of earth, I'm saying 45-pound bags of earth surrounded by a plastic lining as the foundation of the home. If it needs to be a 3D printed cement foundation and structure, it happens through robotics. And it doesn't stop until everyone has their kingdom. This is my world that I'm living right now. You can't take it from me. I'm not saying this with fear. I'm saying this with certainty. I'm there. It's not like it needs to happen. It already is happening now. All the homes are being built. All the food is being harvested and distributed and regrown. Everyone has food and shelter. Manufacturing is through the roof. It's 24/7. Productivity is at a maximum. Orders of magnitude higher than it's ever been. Because it's not managed by human anymore. The result is everyone, as I said, has their kingdom. So now think about that world. How important is your career then? Because your career is non-existent if it has to do with any of those things in any way related. How about government assistance, government agency? They could have been doing this for decades and haven't. I'm simply a competitor to that then. I provide more productivity for a much lower cost, and I'm not asking for anyone's money. That's my world, already happening. Suddenly everyone's counseling is instantaneous and comes from artificial intelligence. What happens to the counseling world? Poof. Gone. What happens to the drivers and the deliverers and the harvesters and the farmers? If they want to do those things, great. That's their world. That's your world. But it's not necessary. Because the world that I imagine already happening guarantees everyone their shelter and food. And yet, at this point in time, there are lots of billionaires out there, and not a single one that's doing this for people. That means the opportunity is reserved for me. That's how I see it. The opportunity is reserved for me. So as everyone has their food and shelter, free counseling, free transportation, it's autonomous, free education, what is left but the drive to create? And this is going to be, and this is the existential crisis for many in the future. What do I do with all of this time? I certainly don't want to use it to think about how there are no more problems when my entire identity has been built around them. And the excuse is I go to work because I must in order to provide. It's these things that go away and get replaced with time until there's a desire to create. And when there's a desire to create, time goes away. It gets replaced by what I refer to as God's manifold expression. It's the eternal now. So when I say to you, that is the wife that I imagine, it's for all the reasons that I've mentioned. A woman who sees this now, who is youthful, wise, determined to see this through, is my wife. And she has specific characteristics that she reserves for me, knowing that I love and respect her already and embrace her in the entirety of her being as my wife. She has never chosen a husband, and she's never chosen to bring forth life ever before. To reserve this in purity for me. How many examples of that truly exist in today's day? I ask you. In today's day, where we encourage the death of life as empowerment, promiscuity as freedom, and a transactional society between men and women as normalized. The first and only time in history where an experiment has been done that pins men and women against each other in a number of ways to go to war. This is the only time it's occurred because it is so ridiculous in concept. It serves no purpose but for imminent destruction of human consciousness. This does not come from God. It comes from the ego self having such a hold in convincing people that the greatest fear of life is death, that the death cult, which is the unconscious life, has become God to the great many. Which is all to say, outside of you, that God, which is the fear of death, is your idol. And that's the only way you can pin people against each other in such a way that it's occurred. You must convince everyone that this is one life to live, battle royale. You drop in, it's every man for him or herself. Loot, pillage, plunder, deceive, be indifferent. Because outside of you, The fear of death is God. The fear of death becomes more important than anything else. Thus it is God. And all I'm trying to explain to you is that death is constantly happening in a multitude of ways. Most intimately, it's happening within you right now in the form of cells. 6 million cells in your body die every second of your life. I ask you, is that enough to convince you to not be afraid of it anymore? These cells are dying. They come from the one, which is the zygote progenitor. For those who don't know what this means, don't worry. You were conceived by a sperm and an egg coming together. We can at least agree. That creates a cell that's greater than the two components, the lock and key, as it were. Unleashes the opening of a door from which your consciousness descends into it in the form of light. And that light, which has always been, gathers atoms, protons, neutrons, and electrons spinning around a nucleus. 7 octillion of them form together and conglomerate into your human body and the perception of it in a holographic experience that's maintained by electrical and magnetic signals. Your mind is electric, your heart is magnetic. The vortex between these gives you the perception that you are alive in a body. But before then, the consciousness that is you in truth, this light, is the giver and gift of your experience to even understand what these words mean, the meaning of words, accumulated associations with symbols and sounds. All of this is given to you through consciousness. This is your truth. 6 million cells die every second. Every single one of those is born from the progenitor cell where light entered at the moment of conception. You must have been that cell, because you're the one who's observing your aliveness and making the decisions over your body. How to breathe, when to speak or not, how to listen, when to or not, walking, eating, sleeping, procreating, growing, dying, all of it. And much of it is autonomous, happening on its own, at the sign of an infinite intelligence, the sign of an infinite intelligence at work. That's what it is. So while all of this is happening to serve you a life experience, where we are as majority seems to have forgotten all of it, forgotten every single bit of that, in order to prioritize a fear of death, one life to live, battle royale against the world. The games literally, nowadays, I think of Apex Legends. Just think about this. The name itself, Apex. The one predator that has no predator because you are the king of the hill, having defeated all possible predators. You kill an enemy in this game. They don't call it a coffin. They call it a death box. And you go right immediately before the box even has a chance to settle on the ground. After you've killed your enemy, you're already looting it, taking what is significant to you that increases your chances of survival while leaving the rest behind. Some even squat over it in a form of a tea bag, as it were. A complete disassociation from reality. Because the reality is, I fear death, right? So you have to downplay the fact that this body is a creation of God, made in His image and likeness. A unique entity of life experiences collected, converts into a death box to be rifled through, plundered. And this is how most of us in Occidental society now see our elders when they die, even before they die, sizing up their death box. What to take, what to leave behind, what to discard. In the meantime, put them into a nursing home, which is just a larger death box. It's just a conglomerate death box it's a mausoleum, in essence. That's what skilled nursing facilities are. It's not a home. Don't mistake it as a home. It's a death box. Anyone who puts their elder into a nursing home gives up on them, says this is just too hard, has prioritized money and convenience over the legacy of their elders who brought them there, brought you here. This doesn't happen in the Orient. And when I say Orient, if you find yourself offended, it's a direction. It means east. And when I say Occidental, or the Occident, and you take offense, understand it is a direction. It means west. Those in the east, the Orient as it were, see their elders as valuable contributors of wisdom and resources, albeit waning, as extremely valuable. And as an honor, these elders are taken care of by their young. You know, I heard this on some wisdom podcast, that the wolf is one of the only species that when their elders, their parents, become too old to keep up with the pack, they're invited to go reside in a cave or in some situation of warmth and comfort. And the younger wolves who are still capable of hunt bring them food and tend to them until they die. One of the only species. So wolves aren't as wild as you think. They tend to their elders. And I would argue that the domesticated dog has carried that on in just the way of nurturing, constantly nurturing, assessing, and caring for their guardians. But we don't care for our guardians, our elders, here in the Occident. We put them in death boxes, mausoleums, awaiting the opportunity for them to be looted. In fact, their death boxes are looted before they die. That's why we put them in the mausoleum, right? Sell off their assets, sell off their home, take their car and keys away, sell off a lot of their clothes, give them to whomever would take them. And all the stories of their life go away and fade. All of their abilities gone. If they ever played an instrument, that instrument's gone, sold, given. And you know what happens? The family members, they take the opportunity to hold family gatherings in the house that was stolen from their elder, poached as it were, and use it as an opportunity to complain about how difficult and challenging it has been trying to find a place for them to be put away. To which I say, you know not what you do. So in my world, right now, my family is cared for. Whether that is apparent to the external world does not matter. For the external world is not my God, and I certainly don't fear death. Because it's happening to me all the time, every second. 6 million cells that came from the one are dying and being born again. However, they're being born into the light that I see as my truth in being. I am God. And I have no shame in saying it, because I'm never going to say that God is outside of me, separate from me ever again. Never. I would much rather say the truth. If my conscious experience comes from that singular cell where light entered it at the moment of my conception, then I am more that than its result and its gift of the perception of the outside world. I am the progenitor and the skipper of this vessel, not its collection of experiences as a result. I am God. And if you can understand, can or cannot understand this, it's your choice. See how I keep coming back? It's your choice. I choose a traditional, conservative life. What does the word conservative mean? It means to conserve, which is another way of saying to preserve. It is a proactive way of saying what matters versus what can be let go of. And I'm saying I am more apt to let go of that which is outside of me, understanding that it has come from an infinite source within me that I conserve every time I am reverent of it. That is what it means to me to be conservative. It is to conserve the life that is created and gifted to us. It is to conserve the dignity of our elders. It is to conserve the communities that we have built, the foundations, so that they do not crack. It is to conserve the barriers that we have made for the protection of our youth, our young, our beautiful children. It is to conserve the peace that we have procured through suffering and war, so as to not experience it again. That is what it means to me to be conservative. It is to conserve the harvest until it is ready for its proper distribution amongst those who understand these specifics. Until everyone knows how to build their own garden of Eden and their kingdom of heaven from within. And to those who give liberally, in the form of saying, God is outside, understand what liberalism really means. Liberal with your opinions, liberal with your judgments, liberal with your distribution of energies and resources without giving a single thought as to whom this is going to be given to and how and to what detriment. Liberalism is the freedom disguised. It's freedom disguised. Liberal with your body, to just give it freely to anyone for the sake of transaction. For what? For the fleeting memory of an orgasm, for the fleeting memory that you have what you need right now, that you are looking forward to the ransacking of the next death box, that hopefully it won't be you. I'm not trying to pin you against me. I'm trying to show you that all conservatives were once liberal. It is simply an evolution of being. I was once liberal with my energy, with my body, with my resources, with my talents, with my freedom, giving it away liberally. I even gave away what should have been most conservatively kept close to my heart, my marriage, but beyond that, my thoughts, so liberal with my thoughts, to share them with the world, to say I'm a victim. Anyone who is conservative, and I mean anyone in truth, once was liberal and made so many mistakes in giving away their power that they simply became tired of being hurt by it. And instead of seeing themselves as this defeated victim, decided to conserve that which was given to them by God. You cannot be conservative without understanding that your source of everything comes from within you. So until you see that, you're liberally giving away your energy and your life force to an external circumstance that is the result of your own thoughts. The definition of that is absolute insanity. So we're witnessing insanity right now in a way that I've never seen. And I say to you, if you truly want where I am in my mind and heart, as a provider, as a conserver, as a preserver, as a protector, if you're a man and you want this, it's time for you to jump ship. It's time for you to get over your ego and decide that it's no longer the chief operating officer of your life. If you are a woman who realizes you've given away that which is most vital and valuable in the form of your physicality, your ability to bring forth life, to live a peaceful existence, raising children to be kings and queens, it's not too late for you to preserve what is left. Understanding that men like me, more than likely, if you've given it away freely and benefited from it, quote unquote, for a number of years, likely will have no interest in wanting to be involved with you in any way. This is not to dismiss you, push you away. It's just, what does it matter to you if I haven't mattered before? Why would it matter now? Contemplate it. If my words haven't mattered to you before, as a conservative male, as a white male, as a male who's middle-aged, who's been exploited and realized that it was done to oneself, that I did all of this to myself. And if you had the knowledge and you never said anything, if you had the opportunity and you never helped, why would it matter now what I think of you? It shouldn't. You've wasted your youth on some fleeting idea that you're empowered by destroying life. Those were your decisions, not mine. I'm speaking very fruitfully to the youth of this world, understanding there is a fruitful, beautiful woman who is conservative and aware of her power through God from within, who wants to be with a man who has been through hell and back and understands that he will not rest until his family, children, spouse, community, state, country, planet, and universe are properly served with food, shelter, and care. And I know, by the grace of God, that woman exists and has reserved her purity for such a man. And she understands this clearly, for she has been raised by a proper family, a God-loving and fearing family. And when I say God-fearing, I mean the moment that you start to idolize God is outside of yourself through the fear of death as the priority over all else, you have become corrupted, and you are liberally giving away your energy. The woman whom I see as my wife understands this clearly and has not fallen to the temptation of that. And her parents are just as much on board with the unification of her with me, understanding that our purpose is clear. Through God, we build this empire and we fortify our families together to ensure that this shit that's happening and rolling out right now never happens again. Never. For it is not empowerment. You're being told by less than 3% of the American population that has 100% control over what goes over the media aside from X, which is your free speech platform. You're being told by less than 3% of the population that this is how you need to think, this is how you need to feel, this is how you need to act, this is who you need to vote for, in order for you to maintain your freedom and to save this democracy. And to the Republic, which we stand, understand what it means. We're not saying into this democracy. No. Democracy means a continuous demonstration that 3% of the population has complete control over 97% without any say in the matter. You must comply. You must liberally give away your freedoms to that. And you're not being sustained by this democracy, you're being mocked by it. You're being encouraged to kill the life within you and to call it empowerment. You are being laughed at behind closed doors and sealed bunkers, filled with the fruits that you should be enjoying. You are being belittled and laughed at through satanic ritual, and this has been brought forth by our own thoughts, my friends. This is no one's doing but our own. So I take responsibility for my own erroneous thoughts, and I want to tell you that my dreams are now aligned in such a way that they've been doubled to show me they are now here being answered. My calling is to serve and love you, to understand that within you is the source of all of your reality and creation, so that you can cease being a victim of external circumstances, close that valve, that liberal valve, and become conservative of your life force. That's what this is about. And once you become conservative of your life force, everything outside of you feels the result. Instead of being a placenta, you become the womb itself. Because right now, if you're a liberal, you're a placenta. You're giving everything that is of value to something that doesn't even need it from you so much. It would rather watch you calcify and become the afterbirth. That is what the liberal government of the United States thinks of you, as a calcified, no longer needed, soon to be discarded placenta. For the baby has all it needs, it's fat as can be and is ready for birth in order to leave you behind, nameless, buried, to become nothing more than nutrients to the earth that it will grow plants on top of you in order to feed off of you indefinitely. The liberal left does not give a shit about you. Look at the Appalachians. Look at Lahaina. Look at the endless examples. Look at the millions of abortions. These are God-given lives. Upon conception, the soul enters. Progenitor cells that won the lottery against 250 million other competitors. Sperm. Racing to the cosmic egg, and you made it. That's not your body. That's not your choice. No. It's the same as saying someone wins the lottery. No, I don't think that they really deserve it because that's going to inconvenience my life. it's going to inconvenience my life to see that come to expression. So, no, I'm going to empower myself. You're not empowering yourself. You're destroying God's life. That's saying I fear death, or the death of my resources, or the death of my freedom, which is outside of me. In my reverence of the death cult, I am deciding that that is more important than the life that has been created by God. And to say that you're a victim of external circumstances and the reason why you are pregnant, ask yourself, what about all the decisions that were made prior to that moment? Do they count? Do they matter? All the years of your life leading up to your maturity, do they count? Do they matter? All of your thoughts, all of your fears, the lack of education, the lack of awareness, the lack of understanding that you become what you think about. Does it matter? Or does what only matter express itself in this event of conception? I wonder. Food for thought. You know, if I can come to terms, I'm saying if William Vincent Carleton can come to terms that he was circumcised on the first day of his life because of what was meant to happen, if I can accept genital mutilation, can you accept whatever has happened to you? If I can accept the death of my firstborn child as a result of my own thoughts, feelings, and convictions, if I can accept that, even though it could be seen as something that was done through satanic ritual by disgusting people, if I can look past all of that and offer those people love, understanding that we are all going through our own processes in life, if I can forgive the doctor who chopped off a part of my genitals, whom I never will see again, one and done, if I can come to terms with my constructive discharge from a job that I loved and was loving and serving people with purity and goodness every day, if I can accept that all of these horrible things, and on they go, I can tell you, for decades, on they go. This is not even scratching the surface. We haven't even peeled off the label that allows you to scratch yet. If I can offer love to each and every person involved, understanding that it is all a result of my own thoughts, that I once was so liberal with my thoughts, erroneously giving them to things that had to do with fear of death, and envy, and anger, and rancor, jealousy, resentment, indifference. If I can come to terms in understanding that I was behind every one of those actions, and thus must take and do take responsibility for all the things that have occurred and offer forgiveness and love to all those involved, understanding that it was done by me, and by the collective decisions of my ancestors, whatever it is, I played my part in it by not knowing what I was doing. If I can forgive those who knew how to train me to understand I become what I think about, but withheld that information in order to see me suffer, if I can forgive even those people, then what is your excuse? And if your mind, your ego is racing to give the answer in the comments, to explain that I have no idea what I'm talking about, then you've already given away your cards. Your God is the death outside of you. Be conservative with your comments. Be conservative with your thoughts. Be conservative with how you distribute your energy, please. If there's anything I can ask, I do this for you. And to all those who understand this, I'm glad you're living the perfect life right now. There are people who need your service. There are people who can benefit from your wisdom. And as far as me, I'm living the billionaire's life, serving and loving my community, as I've said. But if you see some element of me that's not that, not the way I've described, then it is a grand opportunity for you to lift. Yours truly. You can lift me best by giving me gainful employment that's remote and no strings attached. You put me in a position where I can love and serve people without any restriction, knowing how much benefit that brings. Make it gainfully employed. A large, steady, dependable income consistent with my integrity, and understand that there is mutual benefit in that. Any version of me that you see speaking this way that could use that, if you see that opportunity and give it, expect glory in return. The wait has been way too long for this poor individual named William in this state. There's no urgency to make it happen. Just know there are millions of people who have the opportunity to very easily rectify this situation. It's your purpose to ask how, not why, you're not helping. Ask how you're not helping, not why. And assess those decisions. Until next time, since the birds are chirping, be well, God bless, and know there is nothing lacking on my end. There's only opportunity.